You're good. It's recording.
This is our energy policy presentation. Shannon, Allison, Cameron, Nicole, and Camden. This is all of us. Um, yeah. So our main question is, why do some countries use more renewable forms of energy than others? We're going to be looking at three countries, Australia, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. And we believe that differences in political institution, state strength, and economic strength will contribute to this disparity.
Switching to renewable energy is crucial for the health of our environment and Earth, and therefore it's important to analyze how this is being approached worldwide to ensure our generation and future generations can thrive. According to the organization Our World in Data, the world emits 54.59 billion tons of greenhouse gases every year. This is a massive amount and contributes to multiple aspects that harm the environment. An important one is the contributions to climate change. The greenhouse effect is considered the main driver of climate change. The gases trap the sun's heat and stop it from leaking back into space, which causes global warming. This can be seen naturally, but a lot of it is the product of human activities. Some of these gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. Several human activities contribute to the release of these gases, including deforestation, burning coal, oil, and gas, and fertilizers that use nitrogen and livestock farms. According to climatechange.org, increased concentrations are expected to increase the Earth's average temperature, influence patterns and amount of precipitation, reduce ice and snow cover, raise sea level and its acidic levels, increase extreme events, and more. These changes are very substantial and put the lives of humans, animals, and the ecosystem at extreme risk. Therefore, it is important that proper steps are taken to slow the rates down, with the ultimate goal being to eventually get to a climate neutral point. Economic or cultural oppositions to this goal are simply not fair, as these aspects wouldn't exist without our Earth, which is at extreme risk today. In terms of how this is being handled worldwide, we chose three countries to analyze: Sweden, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The current percentages of their renewable energy sources vary, and these variations could correlate to political institutions, state strength, and economic standing or goals. Economic repercussions are a prominent argument within nations and their hesitancy to move forward toward a carbon neutral process. Responses will, of course, vary between different countries and their priorities regarding the climate crisis. With power that stronger countries possess, it is possible to motivate countries that oppose this plan, again through monetary benefits or punishments, and can impact their ability to trade at a beneficial rate.
Okay, cool. So our first explanation is centered around political institutions and their effect on passing environmental legislation about switching to renewable energy. This slide just shows the breakdown for this section. First, we're going to do a little overview of what type of political institution our countries have. Then we're going to go into the strengths and weaknesses of each of those countries' political institutions. Okay, cool. So we're going to start with Australia. When we were trying to find countries to do, we wanted to follow the most similar systems design. I think I got that right. And we chose the three of these: Australia, Sweden, and the UK, because they were all democracies and they all had parliaments. So Australia has a king as the head of state, and then it has a bicameral legislator for their parliament. The upper house is proportional, and then the lower house is majoritarian. Sweden has a unicameral legislator parliament, and it is proportionally represented. Lastly, the UK has a king as the head of state, and then also has a bicameral legislator for the parliament. The upper house, or the House of Lords, is not elected. It's appointed by the king, the head of the church, etc. And then the lower house, or the House of Commons, is majoritarian. All right, when looking at Australia specifically, their strengths, being a bicameral legislator, you're going to be able to represent more groups within society. And then the upper house is proportional, which kind of represents this. And then you're also going to have a better chance at preventing tyranny of the majority party. However, the lower level is majoritarian, so this could counteract this point. Just something to keep in mind. Weaknesses for Australia is it's going to be less efficient at passing legislation because you could get gridlock between the two houses, and then just less transparent since there's more groups, more parties that are involved in passing legislation. It's a little bit less clear who's really responsible if, legislation fails. Moving on to Sweden. Sweden is a unicameral legislator, so you can have more transparency because it's one party. It's really easy to be like, oh, these people are the ones who made the policy. You're going to have less roadblocks, less checks and balances with the one party, and it's proportionally represented, so you're going to be able to get like a good, breakdown of the demographics within the country. Weaknesses, you could have a majority party that, controls the legislation if that's the largest proportion in government. And then there is a lack of checks and balances, which could lead to like tyranny of the majority party. Lastly, the United Kingdom is bicameral, so it's going to represent more groups within society. But the upper house aren't elected, they're simply appointed, and the lower house is majoritarian, so this could mean a chance for unequal representation. But regardless, the bicameral helps prevent tyranny of like one majority party. Some weaknesses, again, like less efficient at passing legislation from the checks and balances, and is less transparent. In some, we can kind of see how even though these are all democracies and parliamentary systems, the type of political institution can greatly affect the way in which these countries are going to try to go about passing legislation that helps point towards renewable energy use.
Our second explanation will focus on how state strength affects a state's ability to implement renewable energy laws and how developed countries are more likely to have renewable energy. It will unpack the effectiveness of taxes in reducing carbon emissions in Sweden, the impact of commercial policy on carbon dioxide emissions in Australia, and also the effects on black carbon emissions in the United Kingdom. We anticipate that we will find Sweden's strong state institutions allow the development and enforcement of environmental policies. The government has implemented targets for carbon emissions reductions, renewable energy adoption, and waste management. In Australia, we anticipate that we will find Australia's state strength influences its environmental impact through the regulation of natural resource extraction, climate change policy, conservation efforts, water management practices, and sorry, I just lost my place. So sorry, and Indigenous land rights recognition. And for the United Kingdom, we anticipate that we will find the United Kingdom's state strength influences its environmental impact through climate change leadership, environmental regulation enforcement, conservation efforts, and sustainable transportation.
The next explanation that we plan to look at is the economic baseline of each of these countries, and we're breaking down each of the economic systems and different influences. For this, we're counting our strengths as aiding them in the implementation of policy and their weaknesses as hindering them. So looking first, Australia's abundance of natural resources and consequently their large industries and history with the mining sector, which includes an emphasis on non-renewable energy, makes it hard to implement across the board leaps in energy or climate efficiency. Along with this, their strengths include their opportunity to make a large impact with their policy due to their reliance on mining in some of their sectors, because they're some of the highest emitters on the list, above Sweden and the UK. However, they have weaknesses in the sense that also they do rely on these industries, so it kind of creates a gridlock so that no one wants to see like these industries fall and prices raise for the everyday consumer. Additionally, they're a free market capitalist economy, which makes it difficult for the government to implement these without some support from the people they're governing over, despite their governmental system. And they have previously gotten pushback for their attempt at carbon regulations in the past. Moving on to Sweden's economic model, which follows a mixed economic system with a lead into a free market economy. Their governmental aid presence in their government provides a lot of aid and has a presence in their economy, but they're not in total control. Their strengths include the fact that they do have more of a presence in the economy because of their strong welfare state, and they have a less of reliance on these certain given industries than, say, Australia. They are able to give government aid without like the large fear of like rising prices for the consumer, and there is an already established connection between people and the government in the economy. However, their weaknesses is that they're not the biggest emitter to begin with, so their policy won't have the biggest impacts. And then looking at the United Kingdom, they are also a free market economy, which binds these three countries together. And their progress in the environmental impacts and renewable energy notes the role of non-governmental organizations in getting these policies passed. It points out a decline in the British coal sector as well. Their strengths include the fall of the British coal sector, allowing them for move along with the NGOs in their economy for pushing policies that impact their economy, and also just the presence of any non-state power in the economy because the government isn't as involved. And they also plan to implement a stronger tax in 2027. However, their weaknesses include the fact that the government does have less power for implementation. So without any reliance on these NGOs, it's likely that the same policy wouldn't have been able to be passed.
In conclusion, climate change is hugely impactful to the future of humanity. Political system, state strength, and economic strength, and affects environmental policy. Changes in any of these three factors could change the level of renewable resources used. Thanks for listening to our presentation.